Some folks will like you and some that just won't. Some that stay real and some that just don't. Trying to fit in will only take you so far. You'll never find home trying to change who you are. So don't spend your whole life trying to be what you ain't. You can't hide your heart with a new coat of paint. You think they'll accept you, I promise they can't. So just be who you are, forget what they think. So just be who you are and forget what they think.
Welcome to Vet with a Mic, content driven by veterans issues. So today we are going to do a little bit of a style mix up here. We're going to do two veterans at once, and we're going to talk about how these two gentlemen have found meaning and purpose in life after the uniform in a pretty unique way. And it's through powerlifting, its own subculture within the U.S. population. You guys are definitely a rare breed. That's for sure. How you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Yeah. So it's doom and gloom around here. What about you guys? Yeah.
It's pretty rainy. It's a little chilly. It's been pretty warm lately, but the last couple of days have been pretty gloomy.
Okay. So let me ask you, how did you guys first meet up? I mean, I know that you guys were in the Army together and you were based out of Fort Drum. So how did you guys realize that, hey, you know what? That's a cool guy. We should hang out more.
I never said those words.
Okay.
Well, okay. I was pretty terrified as a private, especially like my first year. So the first couple of days or weeks was crazy. When I was in processing, and one of the days when I finally got to my platoon, Pierce and another guy that he knows, Swaney, I think were like the first two people that kind of stood out to me. And it stood out to me because I was like, I thought Pierce was a lot older. I thought Tom was a lot older than he actually was because his hair was it was just super gray, but you were what, 20, 25, 26?
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Now, how old were you at the time then, Calvin?
19.
See, yeah, that I turned 24 in basic, man, and everybody treated me like I was the old man of the unit. So I think that's probably it. It's the military old is just a completely different measure. Maybe that's what it is. 25, 26, you're an old man, at that time.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure Tom's kind of a big softy to heart. So I think at some point he might have maybe not taken me directly under his wing, but he wasn't as abrasive to me as some of the other members of the platoon were when I first got there. And I think I just kind of seen that and I appreciated that. And
well, it was kind of simple. You have the guys that were meant to terrify you, and then
exactly.
They get on your back because you're wrong about all the stuff that they didn't tell you. And I was the logical one making sure that I now told them so that next time it was somebody else they were watching get messed up.
Right. Yeah. So you actually trained them. Imagine that.
Yeah. Weird.
Provided a little insight of how to actually get better. That's funny. Yeah. So Tom, you give me like beard anxiety, man. I am so like jealous of your beard because mine used to be longer before I had to trim it off for an interview, but yours is like right there, like mountain man status at this point. How long did it take you to get to that? Yeah.
I moved to Murfreesboro July of 2019, and I literally worked my last job back in New York for that Monday to Friday, got off after working 12 hours at 11 o'clock at night, hopped in a U-Haul, drove here. I haven't shaved since that Monday, so 2.5 years.
Yeah. All right. So it took a while. So let's talk a little bit about you guys in the uniform. So you guys had a deployment together in Afghanistan, and of course you're both infantrymen. So obviously those are the easy jobs that you guys were doing, clearly. So let's talk a little bit about what your experiences were like in the uniform after you guys got back from deployments.
Um, After I got back from deployment, I think actually I had 21 days before I was out of the Army completely. I
Hmm.
cleared out in 21 days, and then I was back in Michigan as a regular civilian. So I didn't get much of a transition time back into garrison life. 'Cause as soon as I
Yeah.
got back, I was just putting together paperwork and equipment and cleaning things and just trying to get out of there.
Yeah. That's rough, man, because you need a little time to settle after you get back from downrange. Now I never had any tours in Afghanistan, but my first couple of years I was in mobile security, so we did a lot of taskings like in and out of Iraq or off the coast of Somalia doing anti-piracy. So I can't imagine going from that op tempo to just. And I got 21 days to try to figure out how to be normal after the uniform. That did you go to TAPS or anything? Is because you went in the guard after your time in the uniform?
Yeah, so well, I had an 8 month break in service, where I was just kind of in limbo trying to figure out my next step. But they do. The Army has SFLTAP, yeah, Soldier for Life
Mm,
Transition Assistance Program, which a lot of people whine and complain about. I think it's just maybe one of the cool things to do, I guess, when everybody else around you is still in and you're the one
mm,
transitioning out. You start to maybe take a back seat from everything, and then I wouldn't say you're treated different, but everybody starts to realize that you're not going to be there. So the
yeah,
SFO system, it helps. What it does is it connects soldiers with resources to help with their transition out. There's other requirements. I think you got to do. You got to submit 2 job applications. You got to write a resume. It's stuff like that help. But to be honest, I went through the whole program, and I don't think I've used anything in there. I mean, I've used a couple of resources to kind of help, I don't know, look for employment at first, but once I got out of the army, I was just burnt out with
mm,
with a lot of the things. So pretty much anything the army had offered me at that point when I got back from Afghanistan was transitioning out. I really didn't
yeah.
care too much to worry about. So I just kind of went there, checked the box, and left. That's how it
You
kind of
know,
felt.
it's funny. There's a couple things that you say that cues up with me immediately. I remember whenever I was transitioning out, and they could have gave me the best information in the world, but I was just not having it. I was
Hmm.
just so ready to get out. I make the joke that there was a me-sized hole in the wall, like just like a Looney Tune style. That's what my experience was like. I was that ready to get out, just that I would have ran through the wall to be done with the military. And to also to your point, last episode, excuse me, the episode before last, we talked a little bit about this grieving period that you have to kind of go through after the form, because there's almost, I would say, a resentment of sorts where you're just like, man, I do not want to hear anything about the military ever again right now. I don't want to muster. I don't want to hear anybody coming with their rah rah ree stuff. Just like leave me the hell alone. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And you kind of have to go through that. And I guess for most, it's anywhere between 6 months to a year where you're just like, I'm off put by anything that even circles the military experience. You just try to, I guess, find your life after it. And that can be really challenging for us because most of the time we go from this really structured kind of experience where everything in life is kind of mapped out for us. And then we're just kind of into this void where there's nothing for us to do. We have nowhere to be. There's no sergeant or E5 that's going to call you and find out where the hell you're at. They're just, you just kind of are left to your own devices. And then you go, well, what the hell do I do now? Because now you have all this free time. And I don't know guys is uniform, but we never really got a lot of free time. So I had no idea what the hell to do with that. I mean, I could go to the gym, which was what I did often. And after that, I just kind of felt adrift in the world. You guys have that similar experience as well?
Kind of. I mean, my last, I don't know, year and a half before deployment, you can even ask Calvin. We were in the field, what, 2.5 weeks out of every month,
Hmm.
give or take. And then the last 6 months before the deployment, we had 4-day weekends every other weekend. So it just depends on
Yeah.
what they have planned or what the heck they're doing way up above our heads.
Right. Yeah.
So my big issue was trying to find time to do anything at times, but then you're now with people 12 plus hours a day where you can't get far enough to not touch somebody.
Mm.
And I get home and I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to be around somebody. I don't want to be near
Yeah.
people. I don't even want to talk to people.
Yeah.
I just want to avoid everybody. So it took a long time for me to figure it out.
Yeah. So you guys obviously had two separate trajectories coming out of the uniform because, as Calvin has kind of alluded to there, he went into a different part of the military orbit after his 8 months. Is that what you said? Of
Yeah, it was something 8 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he went into the guard, and then Tom and I, we kind of have similar stories in that regard. That we went from active duty just into the wild and back into the civilian world. So Tom, let me ask you then, how long did that period of I just want to kind of retreat and pull away from everybody? How long did that last for you?
I'll be honest, I don't think it's stopped yet. I
Yeah,
don't think so. Because like I
yeah,
said, like you said, you spend 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sometimes your deployments, field, you're cuddled up with some dudes because you're trying to get cold. You just I don't even want to be near people. I'm still one of the friendliest people in the world. Even he said it. I have a soft spot sometimes. You've come up to
yeah,
me and chat with me at the gym randomly twice.
yeah,
Just some random dude come up and I'm like, all right, this isn't weird, but I'm generically friendly. I just
yeah,
would avoid people at all costs if I could.
yeah. Yeah, I actually, believe it or not, I'm pretty introverted myself. I have to force myself into those interactions because if I don't, my social skills erode really quickly. Like my natural social buffer will will retreat really quickly on me if I don't force myself into those interactions. And to your point, the reason why I come up to people like that is they're in the veteran identity most of the time. I see them, they have some that is signaling that they're prior service. And so I seek out those interactions within the veteran identity because you never know. I never know how far along in the transition process somebody is. And I take a lot of joy um, and peace in helping the guys and gals who are a little further behind me in the process because there's just so many pitfalls you can fall into coming out of the uniform. And so if I can help you avoid the shit that I had to go through in even just some small way, to me it's worth the social discomfort that I may feel by having to go out and have conversations with people. And I guess that's one of the big parts of the veteran identity. You almost become an ambassador of here, like, let me help you transition the process better than I did. And then that becomes kind of generative. You give that information to the person, and then now they have it, and they can do the same thing with somebody else in their life, somebody else that they come, their paths cross with. And I think that really does help our entire community, our entire veteran community, feel a little bit more connected. Because a lot of the times I hear people talk about not having a sense of community after the uniform because we do live so close on top of each other. And that can feel pretty alienating to go without it, even if there is a momentary reprieve, as Tom was just talking about, of feeling like I need this break from people. There's at a certain point, I think people start to feel that longing to be connected again to some sense of the military culture.
Yeah. No, I agree. One of the things about the guard that I think was one of the bigger benefits is it kind of slapped a band-aid on that feeling for me.
Mm,
And then uh, to be completely transparent, I went into the guard with a big head. I'm an active duty guy. I just came back. I've been to Afghanistan. I got a combat infantryman's badge. Like I'm expecting to go into an air like a group of people or a company of people that just don't take it as seriously as I thought that they should. Um, but it's because of that that kind of changed my perspective on that because I went in a little bit strong, at least with my expectations. I'm very smart about how I want to try to present myself, especially in a new environment like that. And one of the very first things that we did at my first drill was one of the mandatory, like, semi-annual or annual topics they had to do with suicide prevention.
Mm.
And they brought that up, and everybody started talking and listening, sharing stories. Up until that point, that whole 8 months that I was out of the army, I hadn't really cared too much to really dive into, I don't know how you, I guess, to think about the feelings and the emotions that I've actually experienced over the last 8 months after I'd gotten out, until we started having those conversations uh, that day in that unit. And it's because then I started speaking to everybody about kind of the things that I went through. And the more I talked, the more I realized that I'd actually, might have been in a worse place than I thought I was. But more than that, I'd noticed how everybody took notice of me. Um, Everybody was quiet. They treated me with respect. It seemed like they wanted to hear what I had to say. And from then on is when I understood that I have a lot more like power of influence based on
Yeah.
the experiences that I've had, and what I can actually give to not only the younger soldiers but even the older ones that haven't.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember, you were saying earlier, may not have, gone on a deployment, or may
Right.
have only done, their time in the guard one weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So having older people that have been in maybe even longer than me still sit down and listen very intently to what I had to say was a humbling experience.
Yeah.
Cam likes to joke that I'm not very humble, and I think that's because I'm not around the people that I'm very close with, or that I have a history with.
Yeah.
But when I'm trying to be as serious as possible, I think I do come off that way. At least I hope, because I don't. I went through my time period of being arrogant and cocky, and as fun as it is to be, make a joke about it with family and friends, I don't like to be that person. So I try to avoid not, I try to avoid being that. So to be in
Yeah.
an environment where I can speak calmly and nobody talks over each other, and I'm treated with respect and I treat them with respect. It's a give and take kind of relationship, and that helped. That definitely
Yeah.
helped my transition. And from then on, after that first drill, things started to get a little bit better.
Yeah. And to your point, I think our bravado within the uniform, generally speaking, specifically within certain jobs, can be our own worst enemy, because we have this persona that we put out into the world that's just like, I'm fine, I'm good. No, I'm fine. And then people treat you as such. And then you don't realize how not fine you are, because you've just put on this public appearance that you're good the entire time, until you finally start digging into some of the content and you go, you know what, man, I'm not really fine. And I've kind of created this prison cell for myself. I don't know how to talk to somebody now, because I've given everybody this persona that I'm hot shit and I can handle anything. And I think that's probably one of the more salient kind of struggles that veterans deal with. Is it's really hard to be vulnerable. It's really hard to say, you know what, man, I'm not okay, because you're worried about how your brothers and sisters in the uniform may judge you. You're worried about how your family members may judge you. You're also worried about the stereotypes that people have about people who have served. You don't want to be the unhinged veteran, the PTSD Pat, if you will. This idea of a veteran that's just going to fly off the handle at you at the just slightest of provocations. But at the same time, that stereotype that we're all just the professionals that have no problems dealing with these really intense interactions that we have in the uniform, that doesn't do you any good either, because that walls you into this idea of you can't be human. You can't be a little messy, because we're all a little messy, man. Especially whenever we go through some experiences that are completely abnormal, because being downrange is abnormal. Doesn't matter if you're peeling potatoes or you're carrying a rifle every day. It's abnormal. You're in a place where your life is constantly at risk. And that is an abnormal situation for most human beings to be in. Now, there obviously, we've been world travelers at this point, we understand that is a very inconvenient truth for a lot of the people in the world, but not from our culture, not from the United States. So it's really polarizing to come back into that, and because they have no frame of reference to what it's like to have your life be at risk every day. Tom, did you have that similar experience? Did you feel kind of walled in by the persona of I'm okay, I'm good, I'm an
I mean,
infantryman, I can handle this?
it's not even that. It's been pretty much my whole life. It's been that way. It's always I had to take care of myself. It was always me on my own. Even at home as a kid, it was always, I got this because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
And then it accelerated because you get into the army, you get into the military, they beat it out of you. Because
Mm-hmm.
I forget which episode of yours I was listening to. I think it was the PTSD one, where like you said, if you say, hey, I need to go talk to somebody, I'm not gonna hurt myself, but I just need to
Yeah.
sit and talk to somebody. You get stuck in a mailroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just you can't do it. You're special forces and you say, hey, my ankle hurts, you're gonna lose your job. Like there's so much to lose that being vulnerable at all is not only a sign of weakness, especially in our job where we need to be the biggest, baddest dudes out there,
Mm-hmm.
but you lose everybody's respect and their faith in you, their trust, their
Yeah.
everything because oh, it's broken. Let's play
Yeah.
with the next toy like a little kid.
Yeah. I largely didn't want to let down my brothers and sisters in uniform. Like that was my biggest thing is I knew even if it was just yeah, hey, let's use your ankle analogy. Even if I rolled my ankle and I needed to rest it, now I knew that the rest of my watch section had to take my slack. They had to pull my water, so to speak. So I didn't want to let them down. So if it was, even if I'm standing there on a bum ankle for 12 plus hours, at least I know that they're not put into a position where their life is more difficult by my absence. And that's something that I guess is pretty useful in the military structure, but it doesn't really bode well for you in the long term because you're going to have problems that you need to have help with, whether it be an ankle or, you know what, I'm just feeling kind of down right now and I need to talk to somebody. No, I'm not a risk to myself, but I need to seek a professional. And you're right, there is this chilling effect that kind of happens because command structures often they're reactionary and then they overcorrect, and that just reinforces the idea that you can't ever convey a sense of vulnerability to anybody else because it almost becomes adversarial.
Oh yeah, like I said, it started. You ever seen what is that movie, Goodwill Hunting? I was that when I was sent to psych or therapist when I was 9, 10 years old. I was the one where my mom picked me up. They were like, "Don't bring him back. Don't want him. Don't bring him back." I was that kid. It was I got me. Don't you worry. Didn't say a word for an hour. I sit there and stare at you, and then it multiplied exponentially once the military beat the rest out of you. It just there was no purpose.
I mean that's a fair point. And I'm glad you mentioned that specifically about your childhood too, because a lot of people wonder why we come out of the uniform having so many issues, so to speak, is we come to the uniform with them. We often come from pretty economically disadvantaged backgrounds. Maybe we experienced child abuse. Maybe we experienced, we have what the psychologists say high ACE scores, which are these adversive childhood experiences, because going into the uniform is a way of changing your life. It's a way of launching yourself into a different social strata. And if you're going to come into it maybe economically disadvantaged, well, guess what? You're usually having some pretty intense hardships before you even come into the uniform. And so then the uniform makes it harder for you still, but that may explain why there's so many transitional issues coming out of the uniform, is because we're just kind of coming back to where we left in a lot of ways. And we may have increased the load of the stressors that we had before the uniform.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to kind of speak to that because a lot of times people go, well, why is it that I developed PTSD and, the 5 guys in my unit or my platoon, they didn't? They were there with me. They experienced the exact same thing. Why is it that I got it and they didn't? Well, to your point, they may or may not still have some of the symptoms, but if you had some rough childhood experiences, that may increase the likelihood that you develop PTSD and your buddy next to you didn't. Doesn't mean that you're weak and he's strong. It just means that you guys had different experiences before the uniform, and you may be processing things that happen to you in the uniform differently.
Yeah, seeing it firsthand, it happens. There's not much you can do about it, especially when you come to a place where even watching movies, you're like, wow, they made friends for life. Before September, how long has it been since I've seen you, Calvin? 3 years, give or take?
Afghanistan.
Yeah, 3 years I hadn't seen Calvin. I called him up. I was like, hey, we're going camping in Mississippi. Be there. He was like, okay. I got a buddy I haven't seen since basic in 2013. I told him I might be coming to Denver. He's like, hey, come on in. I got a place for you to stay. You create friendships that last a lifetime in a place where you're supposed to feel comfortable with dudes that you would never, like, you can't come back out and expect your old friends to be there, is how much you've changed. And even in a place that comfortable, you can't be that comfortable.
Yeah. And we've talked about that a couple times on different episodes. Right. Once you've experienced, even if it's just living somewhere else outside of your hometown, your worldview is going to shift after that. Even if it's just something you were stationed in Rota, Spain for 4 years. And of course, Rota is not dangerous, but it's living in a different culture. It's living in a culture where they don't speak English as the primary language. You know what it's like to be an alien within a country. So you take that with you outside of the uniform. So you go back to your hometown, and then you're what? Supposed to explain to somebody you went to high school with what it's like to experience that? So it gets even worse though, for the experiences you have, because they're just so much more sticky in your mind. They change you so much more because you have just type of experience than most people can relate to. And so I felt the same way coming back. I barely felt connected to people that I had known my entire life that were family members, much less buddies, you know?
I got a buddy, really close friend of mine. Probably, honestly, was my closest friend for a lot of years in my life before I left for the army, and we're still friends. Don't get me wrong, but so I have two, and it was kind of all three of us together. We were a group, and I'm not exactly sure what had changed, but especially I'd come home on leave. You know, he might come see me. Well, Zach, my buddy, would always come see me. Joe, he might, be able to come see me. But I understand. People got lives. I think he was getting ready to have a kid. He had a girlfriend. He had a job. Blah blah blah. I get it. And then I got out, and I lived in the I lived 20 minutes away, and I was there before I left for Jordan. I was probably around maybe about a year or something like that.
Mm.
I think I've seen him 3 times, like total. I don't know what changed. We used to be super tight, super close, and I think a lot of guys are the same. Or I could still pick up a conversation with him. I'm sure if I called him, we'd be able to talk and everything like that. It's a two-way street. But now when I come home to visit, I don't even get a message, you know,
Mm.
and it's hard to differentiate exactly what causes that. Because really the only thing that's changed that I have a life experience that he doesn't, and I've been gone for a while. I'm sorry, my dog is whining right now. I apologize for
It's
that.
okay.
But yeah, it's weird. It's very difficult trying to connect with with that after life changing experiences. Because regardless, even if you just you serve your 3, 4, 5 year, 10, whatever it is, and then you're in garrison life the whole time, or on a training detail, or for whatever reason, you still come back a different person. I think
Yeah.
about every 6 months, I do like a little looking back to see where I was 6 months ago and see how things have changed. But I see exponential growth every 3 years is when I look back, and see exactly what. what has changed with my life, where I'm at, where I'm heading, where I came from. And I think a lot of the way that I go about my day-to-day living still has a lot of pays a lot of tribute to how I lived my life in the Army. And when I'm trying to losing my train of thought here, when I'm trying to reconnect with people who haven't had those same experiences, it makes it a lot more difficult because they've been stuck in the same almost bubble. You know, they live in the same town,
Mhm.
they work the same job, they this and that.
Yeah.
They haven't experienced the type of personal growth, and everybody grows, you know, to their own speed and their own, you know, grows at their own time. But it's kind of very disheartening to have friends and family that you're super close to, and now that you just have a different life, different experience, it just feels like it melts away sometimes. It's
Mhm.
super, it's weird. Ever since I left, mine and his relationship hasn't been the same. He's done some things that probably maybe shouldn't even classify him as a friend anymore, but you know, I've known him coming up probably 15 years close to now, and just at the point where I think I'm holding on, you know, to childhood memories and all that jazz. But at the end of the day, I still don't think I've spoken to him face to face in a year. You know,
Yeah.
I went home for the holidays, and like I said, Zach always sees me. So we were planning to meet each other. His wife got COVID, so we decided it was not, you know,
Sure.
that yeah, he'll just stay home. But Joe didn't call me, he didn't text me, he didn't send me a Snapchat, he didn't, you know.
Yeah.
But that's life. You know, I'm not butthurt about it. You know, if he were to call me and be like, "Hey, dude, I'm in Arkansas. You want to hang out?" Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Or if I'm home and he calls me and he's like, "Hey, I got some time." Cool, you know. And then I really wouldn't care about everything else. It's just
Yeah. I think
know.
we all have a relationship like that we have kind of had to take personal stock of and just went, there's just too much change now. There's just too much difference between us. And maybe it's something you're right. We change more than they do because it's pretty normal to live and grow up and die in the same little corner of the universe and not to really experience a lot of the world like we have. But there's just, I think we make mistakes because of how bonded we feel to other veterans or to other people that we had similar experiences with, that we think that maybe us being able to like just pick up with somebody else should be able to map to that type of relationship too. But it's a totally different monster. It's a totally different relationship that you have with people who have never served with compared to those who have served, specifically if they've served with you. I mean, I have buddies that I don't, like Tom was saying, I don't speak to them that often even, but if they were driving through Tennessee and said, "Hey man, I'm about to, hit the Nashville city limits," I would say, "Cool, crash here with me." That's just because you have that bond with somebody in the uniform so tightly that it doesn't matter how much time has passed. It's just another level of commitment to each other that you can't really apply to civilian relationships. And I was a football player, right? So there's people try to say, well, we're in the same football team. It's just not even comparable. Yes, you went through a lot of like tough things together, like football camp, but it's just not on the same level as the type of experiences that you have with your brothers and sisters in the uniform.
It's completely different. Like not even like you said, not even comparable. I played football, I played hockey, I played every sport under the sun as a child. And okay, what did we do? We sweat together, we got hit together. I have
Mm-hmm.
literally dug a hole in the ground and cuddled with two grown men because it was 30 degrees outside under a
Yeah.
whoopee. And then the
Yeah.
biggest dude in the middle took it from both of us. All right. I have shared spoons with people because the MRE didn't come with a spoon. Here, Calvin,
Yeah.
eat my fucking cooties. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That is kind of yeah. That was one thing that took me a second to kind of get used to is the sharing
Yeah,
spoon thing.
it's not even it's not comparable. head hypothermia, heat exhaustion,
Yeah.
starving, tired, cold, hot, everything. That is bonding. You sweat a little
Yeah.
bit together at football. You have no idea what we've
Yeah.
been through.
It's
Like,
a different level of intimacy, not to like to make it too much of a joke, but there is a certain intimacy that you have with somebody that you have those kind of experiences with that can't be replicated in other relationships. And I think that's even romantic relationships, people may feel a little bit more disconnected from their spouses because they don't feel the same level of connection to them as they do to people they served with. And I think people talk about that a lot of just, well, my spouse doesn't get me, but my brother from the uniform, they understand me. And because it's just a total different experience that you have. But so now we've talked about some of the issues, some of the more dark spots maybe in life after the uniform. So let's get to the fun stuff. Why you guys are actually here. The picking up of heavy stuff and putting it back down. How did you guys first develop a love for powerlifting?
Uh, so I've been training since I was, I think, eighth grade. Like I would have been 13 or so when I got my first like weight set for Christmas. It's like the typical. I mean, there's a lot of people you talk to. How'd you first start lifting? It's a pretty typical story, but I started getting apologies. I gotta do something with my dog if you don't mind.
Sure,
Is
yeah,
that
go ahead, Tom. You
okay?
tag in there.
all right,
How did you come into the world of powerlifting?
two simple reasons. One, boredom in Afghanistan. Two, that guy, the one
Mm.
walking around with his ass showing.
Come here.
Um, I mean, you have nothing to do when you're in Afghanistan if you're not on mission. You know what I
Right.
mean? You sit there, wake up at 11 a.m., go work out, go get dinner, and we're up watching movies until 4 or 5 a.m. And the only reason we're staying up so late is because of that time change. We want to talk to our family and friends back home. So I was like, you know what? I got him and I got our little meatball that powerlifts too. And I went and deadlifted for the first time ever. I recorded it. I asked him, I was like, hey, is my form okay? Like, I want to get into this. A couple hours later, I was bored, went over, I was like, hey, Calvin, what belts do you use? You know, I want to get into lifting. Like, tell me what belts. He looked me dead in the eye and said, you don't need a belt. You'll never lift 500 pounds. Motherfucker.
Yeah.
So I went to the gym every fucking day and I never stopped. I hit my first 500-pound deadlift, tagged him on Instagram. I hit my first 500-pound squat, tagged him on Instagram. I hit my first 500-pound bench. When I get there, I'll tag him on Instagram. And that's pretty much how it is. It was Calvin talk shit. Obviously, I know he didn't like mean it, but it was just, you know,
Yeah.
that ego again speaking that he says he doesn't have. Yeah, we'll believe that. But afterwards, it was, I love this. It keeps me healthy too, for the most part, because I've always been generally a big dude. So this at least
Mhm.
maintains all that pasta I eat.
Yeah.
And
I can
then,
relate. I can relate. Really. I also say
yeah,
it burns off my crazy. Of course, I don't do the powerlifting stuff anymore. Like I've had 2 shoulder surgeries at this point, 2 elbow surgeries. My lifting heavy days are in the rear view. I can't I can't handle it anymore. My
yeah,
connective tissue won't handle it anymore.
yeah, it keeps me sane to a certain level. It keeps me focused. It keeps me motivated towards something, and it keeps me out of my own head. I think that's what it is. You put the headphones
Mm,
in, 2 hours a day. There's no, what do I got to do tomorrow? What do I got to do today? What's the girlfriend's schedule?
mm,
What are my dogs doing? Where are we going this weekend? What bills do I got to pay? Is my job doing? Am I working today? It's, hey, get the fuck out of your own head. Let the demons sleep for a couple of
mm.
hours. And it keeps you focused and motivated on something other than everything around you that feels like it's, I don't want to say crumbling down, but it's there. And in the real world, like the military, it's simple. I got my paycheck, it's coming. I know my
Yeah.
schedule. It's the same every damn day.
Yeah.
Out here, it's not. And where I need to keep track of that, I also need to keep my sanity in check as well.
Yeah. So a couple of things there, right? Is mindfulness within the clinical literature really is therapeutic. And mindfulness essentially is just being present in the moment, just attending to the immediate. That's it. You're not concerned with what's going to happen tomorrow. You're not concerned with what happened yesterday. You're just right here and that's. And I think with our culture specifically, That's hard for us to do because I don't know about you guys, but most of the time while you're in the uniform, you spend living in the future. What are you going to do on leave? What you going to do when you get back? What you going to do whenever you get out? There are just so much of that we've spent kind of creating this expectation about tomorrow that it's really hard to let go of that kind of thinking whenever you're outside of the uniform. And of course, we all have the baggage too of remembering, darker spots in our history, or maybe times in which we wished we would have handled things differently. But I think mindfulness can have a pretty specific application within the weightlifting arena, so to speak. Now, we don't consider it that because mindfulness doesn't really, it's not as if you're sitting there going, I feel this in my back right now. But you are subconsciously attending to those little things, making sure your form's right, making sure your posture and your body alignment is just correct. Because when you get to your point, when you get under 500 pounds, if you don't respect it, if you don't give it every bit of your concentration and your attention, it will destroy you. You better respect it. And I think that weightlifting can do that. It utilizes mindfulness in a creative way. We just don't call it that.
I call it heavy.
Yeah. But you
that
see the point is that is while you're in that space, while you're in that mental groove, you're just attending to the now, the present. That's it. Can't think about tomorrow. Can't think about yesterday. It's just right now in the demand that weight requires of you in the moment. That heavy, to your point. Calvin, do you feel the same way about it? I mean, are you able to kind of suspend everything else whenever you're at the gym doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of I lately I haven't had very many. So people like in going to the gym is like a maybe a therapy session or a stress reliever or
Mm.
anything like that. And while I think it is and always has been somewhat of a stress reliever for me, it's I very rarely I'm at the point I think in my powerlifting career to where it's not typically therapeutic. While everything that happens in the gym, that's all I'm concerned with is, the reps, how they look, how they feel, where, like you said, body alignment, how my joints are stacked on each other, everything like that. But very rarely do I find myself in the gym just for like a therapy session, just because I need it. Um, I think years ago when I first got into it, I fell in love with it pretty quickly when I found actual powerlifting and I started training for it that way. All and I fell so deep down into it that it started to affect my army performance
Mm.
because my run times got slower. I got stronger. I got
Yeah.
bigger. I got stronger.
Yeah.
My run times got slower. And Army Infantry, if you're a slow runner, you're not a good leader. So,
Mm.
but I before everything, the very first thing I ever wanted to do when I was a kid growing up, thinking about what I wanted to do, was I wanted to be in the Army. To be perfectly honest, I thought I was going to be in the Marine Corps. I went to wrestling
Shh. No,
practice
it's
one
okay.
day, and yeah, I went to wrestling practice one day in high school, and I was like, man, if I quit this season, I'm never going to join the Marine Corps. Well, I quit that season, and then I ended up in the Army. Funny enough, but it, from then on, it's the Army was something that I always looked forward to, and I thought I would love and enjoy, and I do. And I'm still in the guard because of it, but I realized that I was getting to a point where I think I enjoy and love powerlifting more than the army, and that's when it started to consume, my run times and my body weight went up a little bit more. And the way I'm kind of built, I was always a skinny kid, so the army does their tape test, their height and weight, and their tape test. I was born with a skinny neck and big hips. So any extra weight I put on it was very easy for me to walk the line of failing that tape test. And even now, if I know I have a test coming, maybe not right now, but in recent years, if I knew I had a tape test coming, I'd have to almost prepare for it to pass it. And I'm not fat
Yeah.
by any means, but I do have a wider, thicker core, and that's always put it
Uh,
against me. But I
dude,
also didn't care.
I suffered the same thing. I had to be taped every single time. And I've always been a big guy. I came out of basic training at 219. So that is the skinniest that I was ever in my adult life, was at 219, and I still, had to be taped. I have like a 52-inch chest, and to your point, I also have a slender neck as well. So I would find it funny whenever the guy ahead of me, who would have a much bigger gut and a smaller chest but a bigger neck, would be a lower percentage than I was, because I had a slimmer neck. I had this big chest, and they were like, "You better watch it, man. You're borderline." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? The guy before me looks way worse than I do." So it's funny
Yeah.
that, yeah, I'm glad. I feel your struggle on that one. But I guess here's my point, though. Do you ever, when you have to miss the gym, do you ever feel irritable?
I'm absolutely irritable. I'm starting to kind of schedule everything out to where that doesn't happen as often, and I try to not schedule rest days themselves specifically because I account for times like that. So when I do have to take time off the gym, I don't feel as guilty. But the only reason I've ever came up with a method like that is because it eats me and I'm irritable. And now if I don't drink my water for the day, or if I miss a couple meals, or if I'm eating the wrong foods, or if I'm eating pizza when I'm supposed to be eating chicken or beef, even my wife will, God bless her soul, but she sees it too, and she is the one who has to put up with the brunt of it, besides the
I
dogs, I guess.
Well, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, my brother, but that means that it is therapeutic for you, for sure. That means that if you're going
Okay,
without it
so
and you're
there.
feeling that negative adjustment of going without it, it's because your body has gotten used to the neurotransmitters that the lifting experience does for you. Whether it's just, like I said, attending to the present and being mindful, or it's just the endorphins and everything else that gets released during strenuous exercise. So I do think, yeah, I made the joke. I think you were dealing with your dog, that it burns off all my crazy. Whenever I go a day without going to the gym, or 2 days, I feel edgy. I feel as if I need to be doing something to help fill that void within me. And so it sounds like that is what happens for you, man. I mean, it is kind of therapeutic for you at this point.
I would agree 100%. I guess what I would think about being therapeutic, maybe I just had a different sense of the word, or my
Mhm.
version of what I was thought I was talking about was different. But yeah, because specifically because when I do have to miss times, um, well, okay, so extreme example. Before we left for my last deployment to Qatar and then Jordan, we were in the middle. This is right when COVID started, especially with the
Mm.
military. It was March March of 2020, right when it started to ramp up, and everything. So the way the guard does it, you got to mobilize. So it's like you got to spend so much time training to go overseas to get certified and all these certain things. Well, with COVID, we did our MOB out of Fort Bliss, Texas. I forget. There's a separate base next to it. I forget the name of it now. Thank God, because it was a terrible time in my life. But that's where they send mobilizing reservists and guard units, and the gyms were closed, completely
Yeah.
closed. That you're not allowed to go in there at all. So I think we were there for 3 months. For 3 months, I had to sit there, eat really terrible food, because it's a lot of the times it was MREs, but if it wasn't MREs, it was just really bad. Some of the worst DFAC food I've ever had in my life. Camp McGregor, that's the name of it. Some of the worst DFAC food I've ever had in my life, and you don't get a lot of it. So, and in those 3 months, I kind of had to slowly watch all the progress that I've made in powerlifting slip away because I didn't have the gym. I could go outside and run, but the way I guess my brain kind of wired itself now, running just doesn't do what lifting heavy things does. And I have a theory on that I'd like to talk about later. But I slipped into like I think a legitimate form of depression.
Yeah.
I never got to the point where I was like, thought about harming myself, but I did get to the point, and ashamed to admit, where I was looking for ways to get out of that deployment because I've seen where it was going. I've seen how my command was handling the COVID situation and not sticking up for their soldiers and this and that. I was like, this is going to be a rough year. This is going to be a very bad year.
Yeah.
And in those 3 months, I lost 35 pounds. I was back down to 200 pounds, which is like the skinniest I've been since before the Army. And
Yeah.
I didn't have that outlet. I didn't have the gym, and my wife had to deal with it. We were, she was freaking out. She was worried. I was worried. Everything just felt like it was crashing around. I mean, I felt like it felt at that point that I was going to feel like that forever
Yeah.
unless I got myself out of that situation. And I'm not exactly sure what happened. I think just enough not time passed. And I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it and never actively tried to be like, hey, I'm going to hurt myself to get out of this deployment. Because there's a lot of people who did that. There are people who did that. And there's people who did that legitimately. And there's people who did that, maybe not so legitimately. But I'm not anyone to judge
Yeah.
for that. But by the time I thought that might be a route, we were getting ready to get out of there. And as soon as I got out of there, and as soon as we did something, it wasn't even gym related, but it was Army related. I had another goal when we went to JRTC, or at least I had something to do. It slowly started to melt back away, and then I fell back into my kind of normal self. And that's what
Yeah.
happened the first time I went 3 months without the gym in like 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah. And to your point, I wanted to say one thing. Recurrent thoughts of death or having suicidal kind of thoughts are only one of the symptoms that are necessary for depression. And I think a lot of times people go, oh, no, I'm not going to hurt myself or anything. And so that we can kind of dismiss depression like symptoms. But they're like, for example, sudden weight change, whether it loss or gain, is a symptom of depression. People don't know that. Changes in sleep, either sleeping too much or not sleeping enough, feeling lethargic. All of these things make up what depression is. And people may not be aware of them. And so they just feel that they're out of sorts. But those are depression symptoms. And you don't have to be suicidal to also be depressed. And I think I'm glad you mentioned that because we can kind of clean up that image a little bit. Depression can look different for different people. Irritability can be a symptom of depression. Um, whether it be psychomotor agitation, which is a keyed up feeling, or psychomotor retardation, which is kind of a like feeling like you're stuck in concrete. Those things make up what depression is. And I don't think that we do enough within the military culture or within the veteran community to understand what exactly depression looks like, because those things directly inform how we treat 22 a day, right? How we talk about these issues is there's a slow creep that happens. You can be depressed for an extended period of time before you become suicidal. So if we can get ahead of it and understand the things that make up depression before we get to that point, well, then we can maybe start to be more proactive with how we deal with veteran suicide or military related suicide.
Yeah, and like you said, there's like uh, almost like a ramping up of emotion.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that, I mean, it wasn't just the gym. That was for me what I thought was one of the bigger factors. But I'm also, as far as the Army is concerned, I do enjoy training, and I
Yeah.
really like to teach. I like to teach people how to shoot, and I would love to teach people how to shoot machine guns. That's just,
Mhm.
I fell in love with it when I got in the Army, and then um, aside from the gym, we had to do a whole mix up because of COVID. Our initial mission got canceled. So half of our battalion went to the southwest border to help with the border down there, while half of us still went forward. Well, because of that, we had to mix up and change some things. So I lost my team leader position, just
Mhm.
not because of anything anybody did. It's just the way things got switched. And I came from being a team leader in a line unit to being just a Joe in the scout and sniper section.
Yeah.
Um, and it was per request from them, which made me feel good because it was, you know, they looked around the battalion for who they were qualified or maybe malleable individuals more.
Yeah.
But I think more so mature and knowledge-based individuals were, and they wanted me, and I was, you know, thankful for that. But I didn't have the gym. I just lost my team that we've been spending months, a year and some change, training, getting ready for this. I lost that. My platoon sergeant left, came back to Michigan to keep doing his active guard stuff. He was a readiness NCO. So everything I kept losing, and then I had to know, still thinking that we were supposed to go to Afghanistan with that same mindset. All of the camaraderie I built with the team that I had prior to, now I was thrown in with a group of, you know, 30 individuals that I've never really met or talked to.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know them. It's not that I don't necessarily trust them, but if shit does hit the fan, I don't know who you are. You know, I'm not sure that my life or your life even is um, as safe as it could be, is if we spent that time together. You know, we didn't have
Yeah.
any camaraderie, so it was me with a whole bunch of strangers, and I was like, what's going to happen next? Granted, they were probably some of the more qualified strangers of the battalion, thank God, but it's, you know, it was more than one thing. It was more than just that lifting thing, like you said.
Mhm.
It built upon each other all the way to the point where I went to my commander and I was like, I legitimately wrote out a list of reasons why I think this move for me to go to the scouts was a bad idea. And legitimate or not, they were like, sorry, this is just what's going to happen. You know, you're in the army, you know, and granted, I'm in the army, but I'm also in the guard. So I'm like trying to find some wiggle room because they're a little bit more lenient.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
it's
so to
still
your
tough.
point, there are a few things. Number one, you lost a pretty effective strategy for dealing with stress, dealing with these issues, and that was the gym. That was your conduit in which you were kind of purging yourself with some of these more negative emotions. And to your point, also thinking about going into an abnormal situation like Afghanistan, again, it requires a ton of mental energy to just kind of sustain that readiness to be mentally prepared. And whenever you have a lot of things that are kind of evolving and shifting around you, that really undermines your ability to maintain that razor precision, to get ready and prepared to do what needs to be done. And that's unfortunate that the I guess the structure, the military structure, the hierarchy did not realize that in the moment, that increases the attrition rate when you don't attend to issues like that, because we have to put each other's lives in each other's hands. I have to trust you, you have to trust me. And there is a certain amount of trust that is built through repetition. And if you switch me out of something into a new, even just a new tasking, because the unknown is always more threatening. You don't know what to expect, but repetition, you get a little bit more comfortable, you get a little bit more familiar with each round you go through. And doing something like that, and to a soldier, and look, we get it, the military is, there's the external locus of control. We don't have a lot of control over our lives, which actually undermines our mental health as well, because we don't have the internal locus of control. But I think leadership can fail at times, and I'm not saying yours did, but I think leadership can fail at times by not understanding that that shift can be detrimental to your operational effectiveness. It can be absolutely just, can just blow, no pun intended, blow your shit up, because you have prepared for so long to be in that mindset, to be in Afghanistan again, because it's very labor intensive. So I'm glad you made it through that, man, because that just kind of shows us how COVID really affected everybody in different ways, and that the structures that we all kind of participate in too. So Tom, I wanted to ask you something, man. Um, because you guys are almost in different positions now, he's still within the military orbit. How does powerlifting help you feel connected to life after the uniform?
Like I
Because
said,
you
it
already
keeps
mentioned
me.
it. Yeah, because you
Yeah,
mentioned that you kind of retreat away from people. So it's got to be, because powerlifting or just going to the gym generally is one of those activities that you end up being amongst like minds, so to speak.
it just it's hard to explain because everybody that lifts doesn't really think too much about it. They just know they love lifting, so it's hard to get into the actual reason behind it. But it helps keep my, like I said, it keeps the crazy at bay. It keeps my mind focused. The mindfulness is something that helps. But I don't know. Now with, like I said, I normally avoid people, and I think being in the South is making me a friendlier person. It's kind of pissing me off a little. Um, because I mean, in doing so, I've now joined an honor society at school, National Society for Leadership and Success. I got tapped for a National Honor Fraternity. I've also started the MTSU Powerlifting Club. So
Mhm.
now I'm kind of opening up to being around people because I'm realizing that, yeah, I'm around like-minded people, but you don't bother people at the gym. You know, if I need a spot from the big guy or something else, or like, hey, kid, you should fix that squat. You're going to hurt yourself. I don't bother people.
Mhm.
And you definitely don't want to bother the girls. Not that I'm single, but you just,
You
every
know,
guy
I
there
get it.
staring
No.
at you, just don't be that guy, you know?
Yeah, and they think
But
even if you're just being friendly, they automatically assume that there's that you're
yeah,
hitting on them, and you're just like, ah, well, best just to not be the cliche, so to speak. Yeah,
yeah, it's just, I don't know. I don't know. It's just hard to get into thinking about how to explain it when you've never thought about how to explain it.
yeah.
But it just, it
Oh, well,
I
how
don't
about
even know.
this? Because you're in college as well, so that's a little different than Calvin. Calvin, have you ever been to school? Have you been to college at all yet?
Yeah, I'm in tech school right now. I'm in welding.
Oh, okay, cool, cool. Yeah, so for us that went to the university, it's a really polarizing experience because you kind of go into it, and especially if you're a little older, like Tom and I, you go into the classroom and you're surrounded by like 19, 20-year olds who have no real frame of reference for the world yet because they just haven't lived long enough. And of course, our military experience also gives us a dramatically different worldview than the majority of people who are even in our age group. So it can be a difficult transition to navigate. But Tom, I'm be honest with you, man. I appreciate the fact that you are actually kind of taking on a little bit more of a leadership position within the veteran identity on campus because we need to be out in front, so to speak. And I know that we largely feel uncomfortable whenever we're put into positions of prominence, so to speak. We don't like to be thanked for our service largely. I mean, so it can be a little uncomfortable, right? It can be a little uncomfortable whenever people look to you for leadership or guidance. But I think what we're talking about is what makes it so imperative that veterans be in leadership positions because we have these unique experiences. We understand just a whole section of the world that a lot of Americans generally can't relate to. And those perspectives are vital for organizations to be able to apply that knowledge in ways that help drive organizations to new uncharted territories. That's why I largely like to talk about these issues within the veteran space is because we need to not be in the shadows. We need to go out and get out of our comfort zone and interact with people and be in positions where we can affect change because we really do have those unique vantage points that a lot of Americans can't relate to. And we got skin in the game, so to speak. We served. We actually put our lives or our bodies on the line in a lot of ways to keep this American experiment going. So I think we need to be more comfortable with being in positions of prominence.
I don't disagree. My only issue, I wouldn't say issue, that's a bad word with it, is you ever try to tell a 13-year-old, hey, take half your paycheck, put it in your savings account? Don't work.
Right.
That's my only concern and why I'm a little more reserved in that matter is yes, I have the life experience, and yes, like even Calvin said earlier, I was always the one trying to teach everybody the right thing to do so they didn't get messed up. I like imparting knowledge and wisdom, and I mean it genuinely.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't come off that way. I'm a bit abrasive or crass, we'd call it, and Calvin will agree with that point of view all day. But it's just they don't see it that way, is
Mhm.
my only reservation about it. They see it as, oh, the old guy or the veteran or whatever they see. They're just like, I'm not going to listen to him. I just want to get through this class or whatever.
Mhm. Well, I think to your point is yes, you got to attend to the people who are receptive for sure. But did you get either one of you guys get a chance to check out the episode with KP, the Morning Formation podcast? If you
That's the
ever
one
get,
that I listened. Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think
if,
so.
yeah, if you get a chance, check that one out because he talks a lot about what was called soft skills in leadership. Instead of using the hard skills that we often utilize within, especially the enlisted ranks, hey, go do that, right? Soft skills require a little bit more soft spin, require a little bit more explanation. And I think that's in civilian settings, probably the most applicable approach because we're used to just executing orders, right? And when the enlisted ranks, so we understand that we may not have as much control over the powers that be. So we just suck it up and do it. But civilians have never been in that perspective before. They've not had to be in those positions largely because they can quit jobs, for example. We can't, right? So soft skills, I think, are really important in getting your point across, but at the same time in a way that explains them the method to the madness. And it sounds like you can use that because you're maybe a natural mentor anyway, and just maybe you may have to adjust the social script into something that's a little less prickly.
Yeah, we're getting there.
But
We're
yeah,
getting there.
but my point is, and we talked about this earlier, is you can experience a profound sense of meaning in the world by doing that for people, connecting with people in that way. Not only is the person that you're guiding receive the material gain of being guided, but there's a reciprocal feeling to the person who's offering the support as well that also has a therapeutic gain in their life because they feel this really deep sense of purpose in their life. So I encourage you to continue on these paths. Obviously, it seems like you're well on your way, even if you have to sandpaper a few edges off right now. But I'm proud of you, man. And I mean, I don't mean that in a condescending way at all. That really does take a lot of guts to put yourself out there, especially if you're more introverted, such as I am. And obviously, Calvin, looks like you're in that groove as now as well. You're taking on that more mentoring kind of role within the uniform still. And I hope that you can benefit from Tom's experience and help pass that along to people who are about to get out because we need more people to understand how polarizing the shift from the uniform can be. And the Army or the military generally does not do a really good job of communicating that to us that, hey, you're going to feel shitty going out of the uniform. You may be ready to get out, and I know it, I get it, but man, there's going to be things that are going to change about you or about your life that you are not expecting because you don't know what you don't know. And I think the military could probably do a little bit better job of explaining even these just social elements that impact our life after the uniform. Because it's hard, man. I remember I joked a couple of times going from this really important position, like I was an E5, people looked at me with respect, to now I'm just another asshole walking around Walmart. That was really polarizing. To your point, Calvin, it was I had no validation after that. No one cared what I thought. No one cared about my unique experiences. Not that they necessarily should, but there was just no opportunities for me to even share that with anybody. There was nobody that was hearing me out. And that's really shitty to go through because your military life is such a huge part of who you are. And then you go from that to just I don't know, just a guy and nobody cares what I think, and nobody cares to hear my opinions on things. And I think that's where a lot of times we kind of get all spun up in ourselves and we get angry because we don't feel that validation anymore. We don't feel that sense of respect. And we feel as if civilians don't care about us. They don't respect us. They don't give a shit about us. And that makes us angry. Why wouldn't it? We give so much of our time and effort to the uniform. Why wouldn't that make us angry?
See, and that's one of the things that I think as I'm getting older, especially as far as powerlifting is concerned, that's one of the things that powerlifting has offered me is because I've dealt with those emotions and those feelings before. And I think a lot of that has to do with like, I didn't feel like I was worth anything else, besides being a soldier or anything like that. But with
Mm.
powerlifting, one of the reasons, let me back up, one of the reasons I got into the guard is because I was trying to fill that void specifically. And now I'm married. We have a kid on the way. And
Congratulations.
I'm,
Yeah.
thank you very much. We're pretty excited. We just got a gender test yesterday, so we get the results on Friday, hopefully.
Poor,
But
Exciting
poor
time.
girl.
super, super exciting. But yeah, and now I'm getting to the point where I don't feel like I need my wife, my child, and powerlifting has filled that void. And now I'm at the point where I don't care if somebody doesn't care about, the experiences that I've done in the army and stuff like that. If they want to sit and talk and ask questions, I do enjoy talking and sharing my experiences. But like I said, one of the things powerlifting has offered me is I now have a new focus, a legit focus, something that makes me feel good about myself and something that I'm good at. It's one of
Mm.
the hardest things leaving the army was I only just started getting really good at the Army when I left active duty.
Yeah.
And then even with the guard, I can still sharpen and hone those skills, whether it be leadership skills or the wisdom or knowledge I can impart on somebody. But I'm getting to the point where I don't feel like I need that anymore, where I have other avenues and other things to fill that void. Because my whole life as a kid, I was like, I'm going to be in the military. I'm going to be in the military. I'm going to be in the military. Well, when I did it, when I got out and I wasn't in anymore, I'm like, I didn't, I don't think I planned for this.
Mm.
I didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
Um, and I went through that whole adjustment period where I still lifted and everything like that. But I definitely went down the dark path. I was drinking a lot. Um, and I was working, and then my work started to take over the gym and everything like that. And then once that took over the gym, and I was drinking when I was off work, I felt myself go down, all the way to the point where right before I joined the guard, in a week, in a 5 day time span, I joined a fire department, started school. This is when I lived back in Michigan, so not my tech school for welding. So joined the fire department, started school, and joined the National Guard all in the same week. And as soon as that happened, everything just kind of, because my void, or whatever it is that I'm trying to fill or compensate
Mm.
for, has been satiated at that
Mm.
point. Um, but I also understand that I don't think at this point anymore that I want to spend 20 years, or 30 or whatever in the army. I'm at the point where I think I could get really good at this powerlifting thing, but I'd like to put on a little bit more weight. The Army's
Mm.
not going to let me do that. So maybe after the contract, I need to look at, you know, getting out because I don't need it. There was a time in my life where I needed the Army. And then
Yeah.
especially I needed it when I got out. I needed it when I got out because
Yeah.
I didn't, they say you don't know what you got until it's gone. And
Mm.
then one day I'm just sitting around drunk in my room watching TV or whatever, playing video games. And I'm like, what am I doing, dude? This is, where am I going? And then, but that's one thing is that the lifting has always been there before the army, during the army, after the army. It's the only thing I joke to my wife about it all the time. There's only been two things, now three, now that I've met her, that have always been around since they were first introduced into my life, and that's or the gym, my dog, and now my wife. Everything else has come and gone, or it's been not that big of a deal to me. But I think I would be a completely different person and still in a very, very dark place if it weren't for powerlifting specifically, because I had a history of not necessarily well, I would say substance abuse. I've had some rough, weird times in my life. Um, I was addicted to Norco, or not Norco, Percocet, two separate
Hmm.
times in my life. So once, then I relapsed, and I got back on. I drank a lot, you know, different types of recreational drugs, and then that's one of the reasons I think I really fell in love with powerlifting, because I can't understand, I can't stand running, is because it's not as chartable as a one rep max. I don't get
Hmm.
that dopamine rush as in like, hey, this is what I got to do this week. This is what I did last week, and I just beat what I did last week this week, and that's because of that. I think I have an addictive personality, and that's what's drawn me to powerlifting. And powerlifting has
Hmm.
been my more creative and responsible, constructive outlet,
Yeah.
um, especially after the army. The army, you can't. They got a thumb over you. You your set your schedule set. You wake up, go to PT, go to breakfast, go to work, go to lunch, go to work, come home, go to the gym, get drunk or whatever, and then that was at least my experience. That was my life. Aside
Hmm.
from going to the field, training, different training rotations or deployments or anything like that. But especially in the army, I drank more in the army than I ever had, prior to that. And I still I still kind of deal with that, because there's still some times where I got to make the decision, like, am I going to eat my 4 meals a day and drink the water and go to the gym like I'm supposed to, or am I going to get back from the gym and, crack open a 12 pack and sit on the TV or sit on the couch and play video games? Um, so I'm still not there, 100%, but I'm working on it. I mean, Tom will tell you I like to drink, but I've calmed down quite a bit because I have something else that means more to me than
Yeah.
the quick buzz that I get. Granted, it is still a coping mechanism. I'm doing it purely for selfish reasons because it makes me feel good, but it's not affecting my
Well,
relationship with my wife or anything like that.
well, coping mechanisms are supposed to be selfish. That's the point. They're self care. They're supposed to be ways in which we refill our cup, so to speak. And so I I would just kind of challenge you. Don't necessarily undermine your process of staying mentally healthy, and that it's important for you to do that. Now, to the like, do I go do this route or do I sit home and drink a 12 pack? I think that those are extremes of each other. You can need to find the middle ground of that. Is it's okay to still want to like maybe have a couple beers, but if having the beers is causing you to not do the other one, then that's whenever I would reevaluate the drinking. Because if it's causing you to have problems in adjustment, if it's negatively impacting other areas of your life, even if it's just in recovery, like having to recover from the effects of consuming alcohol, that's whenever I think you can kind of get into some problematic areas of your life. But there's nothing to say that you can't still enjoy a beer or two every once in a while. But it's whenever you're oscillating between these two extremes, I either do this fully committed, or I drink a 12 pack and then feel shitty the next day. That's Those are extremes, and you want to try to pull it more towards the middle to help you be able to live the most balanced life.
But that does make me feel a lot better, because one of the things, I don't know if you could call it as a method of charting progress, but when I say I used to drink, like I used to drink, 12, 15, sometimes upwards like 20 beers in a, you know, maybe not even an outing. Maybe you're just
I'm
sitting around
familiar
watching
with people
TV.
from Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of
So,
y'all's
and now I
culture,
get to
man.
the
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I get to the point now where I get that feeling like, yeah, that's what I want to do, is I want to drink copious amounts of alcohol.
Mhm.
Well, I'll buy that 12 pack. I did it recently. I did it just a couple days ago. I
Yeah.
bought that 12 pack. I drank 4 beers, got tired, and went to bed, which is never, that's not ever been anything like I used to be.
Yeah.
So,
I
I
bought
mean,
him a
I'm
30 rack one
happy.
time. He finished it in less than an hour and a half. I was there 3 weeks ago. He drank a beer and a half. He was like, okay, good night.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
Yeah. So
progress, and
Yeah.
I think it's just when you get a little older too. It's just you don't really
yeah,
your cost analysis of things starts to change. I remember I stopped drinking, even like just light drinking, because I would wake up the next day like, oh, I'm sad. Like,
yeah,
not that I, like I said, drank too much. It was just your body starts to process it differently. I guess I don't know. I don't know.
yeah. I don't know exactly what it was either because there wasn't like a specific. I didn't set out to be like I'm gonna stop doing that. I didn't.
Mhm.
There wasn't ever a time in my life where I'd even think I'd be here. I guess, but it just it stopped being so much fun. But what I think really happened is I put my focus into something that meant more and was more fun to me.
Yeah.
Because I still do, like you said, I still do enjoy a beer every once in a while. I say a beer, but it's two or three every once in a while. But I get bloated now, and it used to not bother me, and now I get bloated after I drink a couple beers, and I'm like, I'm just kind of tired. I'm gonna like Forrest Gump, I think I'll go home now. That kind of, I'm just kind
Welcome
of
to old
over it.
age, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the only thing
Yeah.
I can think of. Is it really does? I think just something has flipped in my brain, uh, specifically from aging. That just
That and your
it's just
body
not
with
as
your
fun.
powerlifting is a lot cleaner than it used to be, too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that is true.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into why we change our behaviors across time. Yeah, we develop. Our frontal lobes don't largely finish developing, and there's some discussion even about when that really happens, whether it's 21 or excuse me 24 or whether it's 30. So depending upon the person, you may just have reached the point where the frontal lobes really deal with inhibition anyway. So they focus more on long-term strategy. So they curb certain appetites that other parts of the brain may be more inclined to go, yeah, let's do that. The frontal lobes come on and go, wait, let's I go, let's not do this. Did you consider how you felt last time when we did that? No, you didn't. So I'm going to take control here. So it's something about the development of the brain that comes on, and maybe there is just you start to want different things in life too. I remember in my early 20s, I used to be able to put them away with the best of them. But then getting towards my 30s, I was like, man, I don't really find as much pleasure in doing this as I once did. I don't need to like signal to the room that I'm the best drinker in the room or whatever. It just something changes at like, I guess around 29, where your expectations kind of shift. You go, you know what? I really don't care what everybody else thinks I should be doing that's fun. I just want to do what I want to do that's fun, and that's it. And that does kind of shift, I think, in your late 20s. How old are you again?
26.
26. Well,
Yeah.
you maybe you're a little earlier than me then. You're ahead of the curve. Anyway, so
Yeah, I
is there
don't know.
anything
I
you
just
guys want to? I'm so go ahead. Is there anything
oh
else
no,
you
I was
guys want
just
to talk about?
I'm good.
Yeah.
uh yeah, no, I don't think so.
So, is there any you want to point anything to anybody? Is there a particular powerlifting federation that you guys are attached to that you should say, hey, if you're out there listening and you want to become a powerlifter here in this region, is there a particular association you guys are members of?
Not yet.
No.
I'm
Okay.
not really loyal to either any specific federation.
Okay.
I just the way it's gone for me is I did my first. I can't say my first meet. This was my third meet just a couple of weeks ago. It's just a meet to kind of get my foot in the door. But then like that was through a federation called APA. Well, my next meet is going to be through the USPA, and I'll probably after that it's a national qualifier. If I do half as well as I did at my last meet at this one, I'll qualify for nationals. So I'll
Mhm.
probably stick with USPA for a little bit until I feel like I've squeezed every last drop, and then maybe try to find a more competitive federation. Because
Sure.
yeah, okay, yeah, there's definitely something I want to say real quick. You see, on social media has this thing of like every power lifter or anything like that. There's they hold this world record or this national record. And then you look, and if you were to add up, there's like probably thousands of world records. Well, it doesn't make any sense because there's only so many lifts that you can do.
Right.
Well, every federation has their own world record.
Yeah.
So if there's, I don't know how many federations out there, there's probably more than 10, but there's probably only about 5 that are super reputable, 5 or 6 maybe, that the bigger ones. Those are the actual like world records. So when they say all-time world records, that means it spans all the federations. Because you can have a world record in the APA and not have anywhere close to even a national record, say something like the WRPF. I think that's one thing that confused me is why there's so many damn world records out there when there's only so many lifters and so many lifts you can do. And I guess it's a little bit of a rant, but when you're looking for a federation to compete in, you should find a federation that you fit into. You don't want to go into a federation that you know you're going to blow everything out of the water or you're going to be the best there, because there's no growth that happens there. There's no actual competition for you. What I find and what I'm trying to do is get my foot into the door with this first meet, this first big meet that I just did. And then, like I said, squeeze every last drop. If I go to nationals, after nationals will be worlds. And if I do really good at the USPA at worlds, then I'll find a better federation to compete in. But I'm not going to keep going back to the same federation that I'm better than everybody else in, because there's a lot of lifters that do that. They compete in the same federation that, I don't want to say the USPA is a subpar federation or the APA, but there are stronger, better federations with lifters with bigger numbers out there. And I think I would like to challenge anybody who wants to get into powerlifting to find the federation that can get their foot in the door, and then start comparing your numbers to the world records or national records or state records of different federations of those same lifts. It's not so much, like I said, go annihilate everybody and then just stay in one federation because no one's going to beat you because that federation just doesn't have the type of competition the other ones do. I think there's no sportsmanship in that.
So do you have a competition coming up? Either one of you have something that people can check you out, either it's digitally or whatever else?
Well, he's competing in April. My goal is March.
Okay.
So see what happens.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I got a meet. It's an Arkansas State Championship in Little Rock on April 23rd. It's first cash meet I've ever done. My coach might also do it, and I try not to get. And this is where Tom's going to think I'm a little, cocky or egotistical. But I have a pretty good chance of winning it unless my coach competes. Then I'm not going to win that damn meet. But
isn't the prize like $1,500?
I think last year's was somewhere around there.
You understand you're going to eat more than that in food in the first month of prep?
No, I won't.
You're going to, in the next 4 months of your prep, you're going to put more of that into eggs than anything else. This man drinking a dozen eggs on Snapchat every other day. Please tell me I'm wrong.
It's bragging rights. I get it. You do you, Calvin, man. It's not about that. Yeah.
Well, I can talk all the shit I want, but he knows I'll probably be standing there anyway. So,
right. So I guess that's a good place to put a pin in it, guys. If we're preparing for shows coming up at the beginning of 2022, and we've talked a little bit about how the evolution of life after the uniform went for both of you, and how powerlifting has became a vital part of your transition process, and how you really find purpose and meaning in life after the uniform. So if you've enjoyed this conversation that we've had with Calvin and Tom, please do us a favor and spread the word about the good things that we're doing here with Vet with a Mic, because we largely are relying on word of mouth and letting everybody know about the things that happen here, the conversations that are vital for people within our military culture. And in saying that, if there's anything that you would like to have talked about here on Vet with a Mic, please reach out to me. Let me know some topics or issues that you think we're kind of avoiding talking about, or if there's somebody that you would like to see interviewed here, please reach out to me at ryan@vetwithamic.com. So, in saying all that, I'll say this: however life finds you, I hope life finds you well. Till next time.